the youth, they sending the youth to around people that speak different tribal languages than the tribe that he originally from. So he looked like an outsider to them, right? And a lot of people didn't even catch their roots when Kunta Kinte was telling Fiddler about being from Africa, and Fiddler was like, "Well, we don't know nothing about no Africans."
Right?
Because he was telling you that they was domestically in bondage. Right? That was part of the war effort of what they called the Seven Nation War. Right? But when the British and the French begin to win the war, the Russians are the ones who gave us aid on the West Coast. Mm-hmm. But originally they was coming to colonize the Americas too. Mm-hmm. They stopped in Alaska. Mm-hmm. Right? So now you got Russia then took Alaska, the Spanish, which we had the biggest sea fleet at the time, they took on what's called a multilateral attack on the land. Mm-hmm. Right? So when you look at the where Alcatraz that you coming across the ocean and you could see the castle before you see the land. Mm-hmm. And he looked at like it was just a castle on water until you got close and you seen it was on the island. Mm-hmm. And so you got the Spanish coming around South America. Then you got the French and the Spanish both attacking us in the Gulf. You got the Dutch, the Portuguese, and the English or British attacking us in the Northeast. Mm-hmm. Right? And we got to fight all these wars on multiple fronts. Mm-hmm. Now they're attacking the islanders, so we gotta support that war effort just as well. Mm-hmm. So now the islanders is fighting these people, the mainland north and the mainland south is fighting these people. We've been fighting them for 500 years. They have us believing that we just laid down when they came. That's just further from the truth. Right. The word similarly is the word that's from the Spanish that means runaway. Seminoles is a whole nother word. It's French. Semi mean half. Nolis was the reference to the tribes over here. Right. So it was calling us mixed tribes because we had somebody from every tribe. So the French was calling us Seminoles, whereas the Spanish was calling us Cimarron, mm-hmm. the runaways, right? Mm-hmm. But the runway or the runaway is really a reference to the ones that traveled the waterway, but we thinking they talking about somebody that didn't escape the plantation because of the rewrite of history, right? Because the ones who traveled the waterways, that was the runaways or runway, the same as a model walker runway. And it was for a short stretch of straight land, right? They had a river run through it, and then you can attack them from both sides. We knew the waterways. You can tell who's telling the story by the word that they use. When they call it the Gullah Wars, we telling the story. When they call it the Seminole Wars, the colonizer telling the story. We knew who we was. And they knew who they was trying to rebrand us as. Remember, they came over for a drop of blood. What did the brother say you need to prove that you're part of a tribe?
Negro blood.
Negro blood. Great melting pot. Will one drop of blood from us make you one of us? That was the whole gimmick to begin with. That was the trick, because they knew the law of the land. If we adopt a foreigner and raise him, we have to have a suitable mate for him. So they got to marry into a family. They just can't be sitting on the land. Mm-hmm. You got to be tied to the van. The van is the old Mississippians. The van to the root. Well, now, if you notice how they've been in close proximity for 100 and some years.
Right.
You think they kids ain't married each other?
Right.
Now, the culture, they not telling you the reason why they together. Remember, I told you in the Territorial, they used to be telling the people in the South, the Indian train coming.
Yeah.
And they be like, I'm not getting on that.
Yeah.
And then they
Yeah.
reclassified them as Negro. Well,
Yeah.
some of us left and went with the ones that was being trained in the boarding schools, the Indian training schools.
Mm-hmm.
That's when they mixed us together.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the reason why those two tribes lived in close proximity because the Mongolians took sides with us.
Mm-hmm.
So they got pushed on the reservation with us. The ones who didn't take sides with us, you can look at them and see they Huns and Mongolians. And then they get special treatment from the government that these other tribes don't get on these other reservations. You
Mm-hmm.
can tell by the reservations who the tribe on the reservation took sides with.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The reservations that don't got nobody that look like us on it, them the
Right.
ones took sides with the government, especially if they live in lavish, right?
Right.
Then you got the ones that intermarry so much you can't tell one from the other. So they just on the reservation as one phenotype, but they still the merger of two different groups, right? Any reservation that's in poverty didn't go with the government's narrative. They was forced there.
Right.
Anyone that's been living lavish for the last 100 and something years, building casinos and shit, the government helps them build those casinos.
Right. Right.
Think about that. So we fighting with the Mongolians and the Huns, but all of them not against us. But some of them is.
Right.
Right? And the ones that's against us, they can get it just like anybody else against us can get it.
Right.
So they not running up in the projects deporting nobody. They running up on reservations deporting people to Asia. Why is they
Right.
doing that if they from here?
Right.
Right? That was the consequences of reversing the birthright citizenship.
I
You
got
know?
another. I got another question for you, bro. Because it
Yep.
seems like when I started studying the runaway narrative, the slave narrative, and then I saw when they attacked their masses, when they start raping their women and children, when the Yamasee start fighting them, they even call other people, other tribes to come help them fight against these parasites, essentially.
Yeah, we was
Now,
all fighting. We was all helping each other to fight, and we was lending soldiers from tribe across tribe. In today's uh, understanding in our community, this is what it look like. Vice will call up a GD and say, "Hey man, we fighting these colonizers. We need y'all help."
yeah.
Right? Then the
So
GD pick up the phone and call some Bloods. Hey Blood, we need y'all help. For all of the tribes are sending soldiers
yeah, that's
across
right.
tribes based on the type of warfare that was being fought in the particular conflict. That's how they determine who would be sent where.
Mm-hmm.
Notice they talk about runaway slaves escaping to the north, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now remember, more people left the south and went southwest than they did north.
Right.
They was going back to the motherland to recruit more tribes. That's what that was all about. They weren't running away from no goddamn slavery. They was going to get some reinforcements. That's why they don't want you to know about the ones. Texas wasn't part of the transatlantic slave trade in American proper because it wasn't
Right.
American yet.
Right.
Right? Texas probably been an American country just over 100 years.
Mm-hmm.
The same with California. That wasn't part of America. That was all Spanish America. Spain had claimed that land for themselves in 1492 under the edict from the Pope. Remember, they had a red line drawn on the map, and the Pope said Spain did everything west of this line, and it went straight up to Mississippi.
That's right.
Right? So Texas fell under the jurisdiction of Spain, and then the French needed a stronghold, so they attacked New Orleans and got Louisiana from Spain as a territory. This is how they end up being the protectorate of the tribes that all covered under the Louisiana Purchase. If you look at the Louisiana Purchase, this was the largest part of the land grab because this took everything west of the Appalachians, east of the Rockies, north of the Gulf, all the way into what we call Canada today. That was all part of the Louisiana Purchase. They cut Canada off and gave it the name Canada to maintain the illusion of the English as being a threat to the British, and they're the same people.
Right.
Right? So they put the United States under English control, and they put Canada under British control because Britain controls England. I mean, shit, it's the same shit.
Right. Same.
Right, but so they got the same QSIP number. If they're two different countries, how do they get the same QSIP number?
Go ahead.
Right? So that was all part of the illusion. Remember, the Louisiana territory consisted of something called the Northwest Territory, which became your Midwest region. They had something called your Lower Appalachia, which became Kentucky and Tennessee. And then they had your Great Plains states. That gives you your Dakota, North Dakota, South Dakota, Montana, Nebraska, and those states. Then you had your Pacific territory. Pacific territory was when they, after the Lewis and Clark adventure, when they surveyed the land and laid claim to Washington and Oregon. Right? So now they got the land in sections. The military, they call that gridding off the territory for the invasion. We didn't know what they was doing because they was fighting a different kind of war. Right? They was using gunpowder. So we started making bullets.
Hey, you know something too, Roy? I noticed that when they got through fighting the masses and they kind of like conquered them a little bit, the ones that said, you know what, we ain't gonna stay here because they was using the doctrine of discovery, Papist bulls to enslave us with, right? So one group said, you know what, we're gonna just go. We ain't gonna stay here where they overpowered us. We're gonna just leave and go down and help, join with our other brothers. And then these U.S. colonizers said that, they runaway slaves because they were natives that they wanted to enslave. But since they didn't want to be enslaved, they said they were runaway slaves. Right. And then they didn't even go ahead.
They go to the migration patterns of the tribes in the early years of the colonization. The migration patterns of North America went from south to east. Of the tribes. Right. Yep. Now, the other migration pattern came from the south, coming out of what we call today southern Mexico. They came north and then they went east. So when I look back at the history of the tribes, as I understand it, if something had to be a great pull to make southern tribes and northern tribes converge on southeastern United States, what we call today Florida territory. Right. Remember, Florida and Louisiana was the same tribal government. Right. Louisiana is French for land of flowers, and Florida is Spanish. So they split it. King George put Georgia there, as a military buffer zone to stop the tribes from going into Florida to support the Gullah War.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You got to go back and read why they setting up Georgia. Right? When you understand why they setting up Georgia, you say, well, why would they do that? What would you need to do this for? Then you realize it was a military campaign.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't know military strategy and how military operates, you'll never figure this shit out. The only way you can figure it out is if you understand warfare. So you heard my man saying that they had to create whiteness in order to divide the poor crackers from the poor Negroes.
Yeah.
Right? Divide and conquer. Military strategy 101. Right. Never let two different people that you're oppressing become allies, because now your threat has just doubled in size, which gave them triple the force.
Mm.
So they don't want us to recognize who is the oppressed. Yeah, remember, most of the pale faces came over here in bondage. They didn't come over here free.
That's right.
This is a common historical known thing that when the Europeans started being brought over here, which wasn't until the 1600s. Man, we had already been fighting the Spanish and the French since 1492.
Yeah.
So it's not until 1619 that with the Jonestown invasion that you get your first set of pale-faced Europeans arriving in the Americas.
And I think it's later than that. I think they came it was a sprinkle of them working as servants to these dark-skinned guys. I don't believe
they still got their contracts. They came over as indentures, but the way that they would do the indenture keeps them in lifelong servitude because they kept them in what's called perpetual debt. Right? This is why if you go study maxims of law, it says that the slave is in debt to the slaver. Debt equals slavery. Right? So they keep you in debt, so they keep you owing them, so you constantly working to pay them off, and that's the same application that they use with the sharecropping agreements. Mm-hmm. But first they had to marry off the big mamas before they kill her so that her new husband can take the land. Because we didn't believe in selling land, and you wasn't going to get it from none of us. So who sold them the land? Right? So when you go back and look, you heard Malachi had to correct himself, right? When he said native Moors, then he said natives and Moors. So this is what we was fighting. We was fighting conquistadors, Huguenots, and gentry.
Mm-hmm.
Right? They came over as black Jews. They became lightened up in whitewashing the history after the 1600s. This is why when you see a picture of George Washington or Abraham Lincoln, they lighten them up for you to believe that they was something they wasn't.
That's right.
Psychological operations, mind games of war. All war is based upon deception. So who's deceiving who? And how does it work?
Hey, it was a case that we talk about the Dred Scott case, right? But it was a case before Dred Scott with this dude named Williams. I can't think of his last name. Garner. I'll think of his last name in a minute. But Abraham Lincoln was representing him, and he had the same type of case as Dred Scott, but he won his case. Yeah. So yeah, but you know that what I was saying that. All right, let's get into this, man. This is my next questions about the paper genocide in Walter Plecker, 1924, and the reclassification.
The paper genocide go all the way back to Andrew Jackson and the Trail of Tears.
Go ahead. Let's go in.
All the paper genocide is calling us on paper something different than who he is. 90% of all tribal names are exonyms. They were not tribal names. There was the names, like if you go look up the etymology of Cherokee, it's going to give you Anahuaya and another tribe.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because that's called the mother tribe of the Confederacy, meaning that they are the tribe that hatched the Confederacy or the alliance of other tribes that fall under the Cherokee structure. It's multiple tribes involved in the Cherokee Nation. It's not just one tribe, but it was a political apparatus used to negotiate treaties for the warring factions. So the tribes in the northeast formed the Cherokee Confederacy, or the Cherokee Constitution, or documents of governance, because they had to interact with these people that we call colonizers today. Right? So in the South, they formed what's called the Iroquois Confederacy. Right? The Iroquois is a series of tribes that fall under the Iroquois Confederacy. Iroquois is not the name of a tribe. It's the name of a confederacy of tribes, a collection of tribes. Right? Then you got the 5 boroughs. That's called a 5-family treaty. That's why you can't get the New Yorkers out of New York. They don't want to leave New York because that's been their home for thousands of years. So when somebody telling them this is Manhattan now, that don't mean nothing to them. They from the land. It's the same in Chicago. Right? But we didn't know in Chicago, as in New York, the movie Warriors. Right? Listen to Osiris' speech at the beginning of the movie, because he's telling you about our tribes being turned against each other, but he's talking in the sense of gang culture, which is street culture, which is tribal culture living off the land. So that's how they came up with the guidelines of stuff called crime. Crime is anything that you naturally do that they have not yet monetized. If they haven't monetized it yet, they pass a law in order to monetize it, and they used to try to take whatever, once they pass a law, they used to have a habit of, when they make the new law, making the people that did it before the law was passed punishable. They came up with something, a doctrine called ex post facto violation. That means that if they don't like what you're doing, they can't stop you from doing it right now because it's not against the law. But when they pass the law for it, if you stop doing it, then they can't prosecute you for what you did before they passed the law. That's an ex post facto violation, which means that it's a violation that takes place after they posted the law. Right? So most of the laws, they got so many laws on the book. Everything you do, break a law somewhere in this country every day. Knowingly or unknowingly. 99% of them is unknowingly. They did that on purpose, and that's why they got as a maximum law, ignorance of the law is no excuse. You can't be exempt for the law for your ignorance. Right? But once you become aware, you can do better, but you can't do better if you don't know better. But they don't care. Because they make the laws to capture the ones not involved. Most of us don't realize that 99% of the tribes have no contracts with these people. No treaties with them. Right? We don't want nothing to do with them. We want their whole shit gone. Most of us don't know that they called the tribes outlaws. Let's go back to the Dred Scott case. The difference in the guy you was talking about, Abraham Lincoln representing, and Dred Scott, is Dred Scott from the land. The other guy was an import. Right? And the import got the relief of the government. We do not, they law don't supposed to apply to us. Because we was here already. You can't come in and tell me how to live in my house. The problem is they used that uniform system of what they call law enforcement and judiciaries, judges, to give it the appearance of legitimacy in order to make you be obedient to their authority. It's the same as people, white coat syndrome. The doctor said it, it must be true. You got cancer. You didn't have cancer before the doctor told you. Now, psychosomatic illness sets in, and all of a sudden, you got cancer for real. Because you believe the doctor over your own self.
Yeah, that's right. That's a fact.
So this is why they tell you that you're not a scholar if you don't have any alphabets behind your name, because there's no way you can learn anything on your own accord, right? But I beg to differ because I'm an undercover scholar. The shit that I know will make your ass holler. Hello.
Hey, when do you think they came out with this slave narrative? Because I don't see it coming to the 1800s. I mean, like we came from Africa, slave narrative. They was enslaving us when they came over here, we know. But like, when did they say, okay, all right, we're gonna start?
First they had to develop a term for the bondage system that became known as slavery. Slavery is really Slavic.
That's right. That's a fact.
Because the word slave is a Slav from Yugoslavia. When they was fighting the people from that region, those people were Northeast Asians called Huns. This is why some of the $5 Indians look like Huns and some of them look like Mongolians. Right. Because this is the Byzantine kings is fighting them, Rome is fighting them, Prussia's fighting them. Prussia used to be a part of the Hun Empire, where the Khazarians at, but they was conquered by Moors. Mm-hmm. The Moors whooped their ass after Genghis Khan died and pushed their stronghold further into the east. And then that became known as Khazaria, where your Khazars come from, which is your Ashkenazi.
Right.
Right, which is your fake Hebrews, your mulatto offspring of the Moors who married the concubines whose children didn't have a birthright, so they put them in charge of banking.
Right.
Because they don't own that, but they can live off the bank account. It can buy their expenses out of the petty cash drawer. Because they caretakers of the estate.
Yeah, right. The Red Cross.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, so Raw, let me ask you this, because I think they got that backwards. I think that they was enslaving us, and that they had brought this other crew in, this crew that was still starting to replace us. So they talk about how when I was listening to the seminar when Andrew Jackson was on the scene, they was importing a lot of people into the country during that time, 15,000, 20,000 people. And then all of a sudden, they pulling off some kind of Indian remove whack after you import all these people, and then say that they these guys are the guys, and these guys are slaves. So
it was so far. They go back to David Walker's appeal.
Okay, go ahead.
Right. Remember, David Walker is writing his appeal. He's putting this out there for the chiefs, asking them, who is these people in bondage on the land?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right. So slavery was foreign to our culture, because when we took people in, we made them part of the family. We didn't believe in working you like a slave. Right. We didn't believe in brutalizing people. We had a common courtesy among each other, which existed among most of the tribes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right. You had a few of the tribes that we didn't really mess with because they were more hostile to outsiders, so they was more secluded, which made them easy for the European to conquer.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so it wasn't that they didn't have anything to do with the slave trade. They was dealing with people who traded in slaves. If you go back, it's a book called Moors and Masonry. Before they was calling them slave auctions, they were called ransoms. And they would capture people of status in time of war, and they would ransom them back to their tribes or a neighboring tribe.
Yeah.
This ransoming of these significant tribal people later became slave auctions.
Bail bondsmen.
Yeah. Because once you capture them, whoever put the bounty on them, because you got to remember, the bounty is the result of the warrant.
That's right. The warrant. Go ahead.
Yep. Which is the ongoing declaration of war. In order to make us not form a tight-knit unit of resistance, they only wage war on us one at a time and pluck us out of the community one at a time.
Damn.
That way, we never see what's being done to us. It's savage warfare. So the Cherokee ended up realizing what was being done with the slave trade. And remember, head of household was called the master of the house.
Mm-hmm.
We believe when we see master, that means slave master. That means head of household. That's all it means. So you look up a lot of these census records by the head of household, which is the father or the mother, they'll say master. Right? But then they list their offspring as the slave. This is how you get your slave narrative incorporated into history. Because now, if you live in this house under this master's authority, you're his slave. Now they have to give a definition to the word. It don't mean Slavic no more. It means one who is in service of another. Secondary definition is changed from its original form. That's why etymology is important. That it was only one tribe, but then they had a group of runaways that joined on with the tribe. That's some BS.
Right.
When you look at the migration pattern and you see we was all going to, at the time of the Gullah Wars, we was going from the north to the south, back east. We was coming from the south to the north, back east. We coming from South America.
Mm-hmm.
You got islanders. If you look at the conclusion of the Haitian War, you see that the Haitians that left went to two places. The Conjure people went to New Orleans to aid and assist in the breaking of the conjures, because we was using conjure magic as well in fighting these wars. But you had the foot soldiers leave Haiti and go to Florida as a support for the Gullah War. That's the easiest migration pattern for you to see that we knew we was fighting this war on all fronts.
That makes sense, Roy, because if you study the next pattern, the next migration pattern is when we migrate back home. That's during after they so-called Jim Crow era. Right?
That's called the Industrial Revolution.
Right.
In the Great Migration. That's what they call it in American history when you're studying it. Right. And the justification was the industrialization process supposed to be creating jobs for people to leave the so-called plantation. Now remember, slavery supposed to be over.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And they creating jobs in the north to leave the plantation.
Right.
For us to leave the plantation. Why we on the plantation before we migrate? And then if it's a plantation, who plantation is it? Those are family farms. We gotta get this victim mentality out our head, because as long as we believe we was the victims of somebody else's servitude, we don't realize that we ain't never stopped fighting. The war evolved. And then it got down to the 1900s. Noble Drew Ali see the problem, Marcus Garvey see the problem, and then they put us on a path, a trajectory from the red house and the blue house of masonry in order to see what's being done in secret and expose it in the public.
Mm-hmm.
Right? They got to give us an opportunity to discover what they're doing to us so that they don't suffer the karmic retribution of being an oppressor. So they always put it out, but they put it out as fiction, as satire, right? As theater.
Mm-hmm. Hey, Rob, my next question, he said that Abraham Lincoln freed the slaves. Well, we know Abraham Lincoln then freed the slaves. He just pushed them over to Congress, right? So could you go in on that? They still teach that in school today that Abraham Lincoln freed the slaves.
The original meaning of emancipation before the secondary meaning of emancipation being a synonym for liberation, which is two different things.
Mm-hmm.
The original meaning of emancipation was to transfer from one to another. You emancipated from your possession in order to put it in somebody else's possession. Or you emancipated from somebody else's possession in order to put it in your possession. A proclamation is a public statement. It's an oral statement put in the public domain. So they was telling you then that they was transferring ownership from the private to the public, from individual slave owners to a slave government. The government owned all the slaves. Who do they consider the slaves? Everybody that's in the government. Everybody that's under the governmental lines of demarcation, the grid that they created as military zones.
Mm.
Them states ain't states because they was territories first. You gotta remember that. A state means a static position in military. You gotta look at static positions, meaning this position and this will always be watched over by this group, this battalion, right? This branch of government or branch of military. So they give you a grid pattern. And then they tell you they states, and each state got their own jurisdictional authority. You're either under the jurisdiction of the police, the sheriff, or the marshal, or the FBI, right? So once you understand how the military divisions work, then it start to make sense to you. But as long as you are foreign to understanding military strategy and you don't play chess, you won't figure this out.
Yeah, it's complex. It's a complex conjure. It's a long conjure spiel, a long spiel to make us. So that the amnesia part, Rod, the amnesia. How long do you think it took them to get rid of all the people who knew and remember and pretty much wipe our mind out and start us off with this African, everybody African?
Look at how many people they lynched.
Yeah, that's right.
All of the lynchings, they weren't no average everyday Joe. Those were community leaders, head of households or families, right? Next in line to take over the head of household of families. They killed him, like, for instance, Emmett Till, Chief Littlehorn. He didn't even get to remember who he was before they murdered him. But he was starting to remember. He wasn't whistling at that lady. He was whistling Dixie, a war cry. And then they used the lady as the pretense for the apprehension of him because they had a warrant. Declaration of war against one individual. Except it was unofficial. Mob rule, democracy.
Right. Hey, let me play this clip right here because it's based on something you just said. At first, just like they, if you go back to the new paradigm when they start creating welfare and then going out to the women saying you can get rid of your man if you take, get this assistance from the government, we'll pay your rent. So they attack the women based on what he said, starting, from the, even if you go back to the Monta Oka story that they made up, right? The Monta Oka story. So it's like they always attack. They made that like they sent a piece to go after our women. Let's go ahead, right?
Okay, remember, they didn't just take the women. They married them. Had babies now. Right? That's how you get control of the land. Under the tribal structure, you can only be the caretaker of the land if something happened to your wife. Right? And then you're supposed to appoint the next big mama as the head of household. But under the colonial system, they come from patriarchy. So when they take the women and marry them like that, and then when they murder them, poison them off, Then they take control of the property, and instead of keeping the property in the family, this is when they go make their sharecropping agreements. This is why most of the head of house on the sharecropping is always a man's name. The women didn't do sharecropping agreements. They just grew the crops and had the family farming the crops. They understood how to maximize the potential of the land. They didn't need no sharecroppers agreement. Right? Those foreign men who married our women, they didn't know how to maintain and run a farm.
Right.
So they was extravagant in their spending habits from Europe. Because over there they had money. Over here they just regular. Because they got kicked out of Europe already. So that was the key point in the taking of the women and the children was the one they used to force labor. They wasn't using the adults for forced labor. Right? They had to start you off as a child under forced labor in order for you to continue into adulthood. The re-education program.
Hey, bro, I hear a lot of people that move to Africa because I was thinking about it a long time ago. I was thinking about, I'll move to Africa before I figured out really what was going down. But a lot of native born Americans who don't know they think they Africans, right? They moved. I've been hearing a lot of stories, and one of them is JT. He moved to Africa, and he said as long as you visiting over there, they treat you pretty cool. But then once they find out you moving over there, where you staying over there, he said they treat you worse than in America. He said that because you're not really African.
All of the Africans ain't the same, just like all of us ain't the same.
Okay.
Some of them is like black Nazis over there to anybody that ain't from the continent. They don't want you there. I don't care where you come from. India, China, Europe, America, Australia. If you ain't from the continent, they don't think you need to be on the land. Then you got other people that's more liberal in their approach. As long as you come over there respectful, they don't mind you being there. Right? And they don't mind how long you stay as long as you remain respectful of the local cultures. And this is what made the colonizer become hostile to the people that was like that, because they would allow them to come over there and they would lay the law down to them as long as you stay to yourself under your own vine and fig tree, you're a man, you being here. But when you become disrespectful, then you're going to start war. So then you got your Boer wars, your Zulu wars, all these different wars being fought in Africa with colonizers during the scramble for Africa, because they not respecting the cultures of the peoples of the land. Right? So even the liberal cultures over there became hostile to foreigners. Right? Then you got to remember, they leery of dark-skinned people too, because the Arabs that was kidnapping them and putting them in bondage servitude was just as black as them. You be forgetting that. Anybody don't believe it, all you got to do is look up Tipperary, the most notorious slave trafficker in world history that's on record. So yeah, all of the Africans are not complimentary to strangers from anywhere. Just like all of the tribes over here, in certain neighborhoods, if you go in their neighborhood, you can't make it through their neighborhood without a mob talking about what you're doing over here. You got neighborhoods like that in New Orleans. You got neighborhoods like that in Memphis. You got neighborhoods like that in Miami, Orlando. You got neighborhoods like that in both of the Carolinas, Virginia, New Jersey, New York. You just can't walk through a neighborhood and you ain't from it. It's becoming more open now. Right? Because now people are being trying to figure out what's going on the land. We know something is up, but most of us didn't know what it was until certain people started coming out telling the story. Now it's becoming common knowledge and easy to see.
Everybody going to start taking questions in just a minute. Hey, everybody hit that like button. We got about 1,500 people in here. Everybody hit that like button, y'all. If you want to show Chief some love on the donations, we're getting about around Christmas where you can send them grandbabies some gifts. We dropping that Cash App in the links every 5 or 10 minutes, and we're gonna be posting it every in a minute, so you can show your love on the donations. Hey, everybody hit that like button, man. Hit that subscribe button right now, man. We got about 1,500 people in here. We getting lit. Otto, Jefferson, and Abraham Lincoln. So what's up with these cats, man? Like they were mulatto Moors or something that, like who are these guys? And because like Andrew Jackson, he definitely was a tyrant. Like even when the court made the rules, which I think that was an act, he defied the Supreme Court ruling and still made us attacked us. Created this act where he chased these people that they imported off the land, and then they paper genocided us, said that we were Africans and Negroes and colors, and that these new guys are Cherokees, and that they the real natives, and they deserve a little bit of piece of land up in South Carolina or this and that. So, what is your take on that, man? On our replacement crew, because we know about the Indian schools, right? The boarding schools.
And we already talked about that with the paper genocide. Andrew Jackson, when he was doing the Indian Removal Act, right? That's because they was clearing the land, trying to create a military buffer zone because Spain was getting their ass whooped in Florida.
Right.
Remember, when the American so-called government, these are English. When they are making an incursion into Florida, they making backdoor deals with Spain because this is how they're going to get the Florida territory. Right? So just like when the French got ran out of Detroit, they got ran out of Haiti, they had to go back home. Right? Which led to the Louisiana Purchase by the English. The English was never supposed to colonize beyond the Appalachian Mountains, but when they bought the protectorate rights from the French, then they assessed the land with Lewis and Clark. Then they decided that they was going to expand their salvage right far beyond the Appalachian Mountains. So this is how they set it up, how they set the stage for their incursion. We gotta remember, the so-called founding fathers of the United States government as it stand now, none of them was from the land.
Right.
All of them was from somewhere else.
That's right.
And then the people that was from the land, like for instance, the real George Washington's from Barbados.
Right.
They replaced him with either the French-born George Washington or the Virginia-born George Washington. Now, George Washington is a general, but America not a country. What president made that nigga general?
Right.
Right? Under whose order are you the general?
John Hance.
You see, so America's it's not a government yet. And he come in to become the so-called first president as General George Washington, taking on the role of the commander-in-chief of the armed forces of the United States of America, because that's what the office is.
Right.
Commonly referred to by his corporate title, president. President is the way you call a CEO, but he's not a stakeholder.
Right.
He's just the person that's in charge of making the corporate decision. He's a president, a CEO. But the commander-in-chief of the armed forces is a whole nother thing. This is how Trump can be a wartime president ruling over the military at the same time.
Hey, y'all drop y'all questions in the chat for Chief. Y'all, we gonna post them up for y'all so Chief can go in. Hey, but I got one more question for you while they getting their questions ready. Hey, Chief, what do you think? What do you see happening in 2026 with the U.S. government and just like with everything that's happening right now. And to me, it's like everything that we're saying is like happening, and people want to see it like it happened. Like, oh, why don't they go down today or tomorrow? Why don't they be there, right? But based on what's happening now, with the money, do you think everything will be like we'll be going into that reset by next year? The reset of this new system. Go ahead.
We're in the middle of the reset right now. Remember, we at the last couple of sentences of the continuity of government FEMA document.
Mm-hmm.
And that was being enforced using the UNDRIP, United Nations Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous People, and the AMDRIP, the American Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous People. When you use those two documents together, both of them recognize your indigenous rights. Your rights is what you assert, right? It's what you do in order to exercise who you are. So one of our rights was to use the oral tradition of the tribes in order to communicate across tribes, so all tribes similarly situated. That's in both documents, that we had a right to our oral tradition.
That's right.
The oral tradition is predicated upon putting it in the public domain, and we use the judicial standard because of the strict nature of the standard, ensure that the public notice is properly filed. So all social media platforms meet the standard criteria in the judicial description of a public notice, meaning timestamps, archivable format in which it can be retrieved and verified. Right? Now, this time-stamped archivable format allows us to use that social media platform to put things in the public notice. When we give in the description of what happened to our people, by default, being that we are qualified chief, we become discussing the problem before the collective tribes, using the flat platform for the oral tradition to be expressed in a public notice restriction format. So notice the agent is notice to principal, notice the principal is notice to agent. So everything we do is subject to the law of the land, not the law of the sea. Because under the law of the sea, we have no rights that they respect. They told us that in Dred Scott. Right? So the only way we can get respect is to assert the territorial jurisdiction of the tribal right. We have a right to all tribal lands. It's saying in both documents. All of the land is tribal. So we had to reclaim the 10 square miles of Washington, D.C. So they put the totem pole in Washington, D.C. in 2017 to reclaim that as part of the collective tribal lands that we was reclaiming. It's all been done following the oral tradition. From Scipio putting the Pope on notice to the Pope repudiating the doctrine of discovery and the fruit of the poison tree doctrine and their legalese being applied, everything that's built on the doctrine of discovery becomes null and void. As reflected in the letter that was written to Obama by Pope Francis to Talking You.
Yeah, 2014.
See, so it's all in the public domain. Now we put it all together and tell everybody what's been taking place, and now it becomes actionable by the collective tribes by consensus of common agreement according to the oral tradition. So all they got to do is just say, I agree with getting the imposters off the land in a collective format, and they got to go. Yeah. We all want them gone. I don't know nobody want them to stay. Right? And even the ones that's pretending to be us want the imposters off the land, even if it's them, but they don't know it's them.
Mm-hmm.
But you see it transpiring in real time. Every major city on the land right now have National Guard forces just outside of the city waiting to be activated. Now, why is that important? Because when the transfer of power takes place, the National Guard have to arrest judges. The National Guard has to arrest police chiefs and top brass. And some of the officers that been using the badge in order to do their dirt, they know who they all is.
Mm-hmm.
Then the rogue sheriffs, the frauds, they gonna be getting arrested by the real sheriffs, the ones that's properly put in their position, and we're gonna be watching this, talking about what the fuck is going on. And it's not too far off before they let it be seen. They done already rounded up the big fish. Now they gotta go bottom skinning in order to get the motherfucking the little small fries up and get them on out the way too, cause we ain't finna leave none of them here if we can help it.
Yeah, I can see that. Somebody said that you see the reset ending before this end of this year. We got what, a couple more days? What, about 9-10 more days?
That's one of them things that if somebody tell you the day that it was gonna happen, they'll be making it up. And I'm not into making up information.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. All right, we got the next question for you, brother. It says, with declaring your indigenous status, should a person get trust? A trust? Does trust still uphold their banking system?
No, you can do a trust outside of their system. You can also build a family bank, independent family bank outside of their system. They just don't want you to know it. That's why I've been telling this for about 5 years now. Now when you go to Amazon, type in family banking, and used to only be like 2 books come up. Now you got a whole fucking stream of them. How to do family banking. Videos on YouTube. When I was telling everybody about it, you used to only be able to find like 2 or 3 videos on it. Now it's a whole list of videos on how to set up a family bank. Right? Because that's the only way to take your power back is you got to take control of every aspect of your life in all 10 areas of people activity. And the first one is economics.
Yeah, you know what? I remember now that you say something about that family bank. We had something like that in my family, but we didn't call it a bank. We call it a family pot. It is where my big mama kept all the money. Like people would give a certain amount of money every week out of their check to big mama. And then she would make a family pot. And then if anybody needed something, they would come get a loan from big mama out of the family pot and then just pay it back. So that's how we created Big Mama was the bank, really, pretty much.
We also invented insurance.
Go ahead.
We invented insurance, and what they call policies. Policies became known as the numbers, but policies was the trade in insurance documents. To have life insurance and, for people to bury the dead. That started by what they was called back then. They wasn't called secret societies or brotherhoods. They was called guilds. They became later known as secret societies and brotherhoods. They was called brotherhoods back then too, though. They've been called brotherhoods longer than anything else. But that's where the insurance comes from. Big Mama always had a family bank. And just like you say, all of the family will contribute. If one of us needs something, they go to Big Mama and she take care of it. And you just got to put it back. That's it.
Yeah.
There wasn't no interest. Interest is a foreign concept designed to be part of the inflation system through fractional reserve banking. If you look up fractional reserve banking right now, you'll find more videos on it than it was 10 years ago. It was even hardly talked about. But fractional reserve banking is how you operate a debt-based system to ensure that at the close of that system, you end up with all the substance and the people end up with all the debt. It's called fractional reserve banking. Now, it's attacking you on 2 tiers. It's attacking you through attrition model. Attrition means a gradual succession of a thing. The attrition model is to gradually raise the value or lower the value of the currency that increases the value of goods we commonly call inflation. That's called taking it off the top. Now, we're taking it off the back. This is called taxation. So you trapped between taxation and inflation. Inflation is sucking the money off as it grows. Taxation is taking the money as it come in.
Man.
So it's all trickery, it's all deception, and it's all fraud. And that's why we ended all their contracts, because they never entered the contract in good faith, because they never upheld the contract they entered. All of their treaties are based on fraud. And the fraud is that they even signed them with the tribes. Half of those treaties, the tribes not signing those treaties. Those treaties between European powers on our land. We didn't have nothing to do with that. They made the agreement. We just got trapped in the blood right that stuck us in here fighting this war from the bottom.
I want to know what. Okay, here goes somebody right here. It says, Little Turtle, Chief Little Turtle.
I'm not familiar with that particular chief.
I think I heard a little.
Unless you're talking about Chief Little Horn when I was talking about Emmy, that might be what he talked about. But I'm not familiar with Chief Little Turtle.
I think I heard of Chief Little Turtle. Hey, what tribe is that? I think I came across that Chief Little Turtle before. I think it was it an Apache tribe? But I noticed, man, every tribe was fighting for to stop getting their land taken. And it's like this. This is my question for you, Rod. And then we take this next question. What was the overall after they took our land? How did one a certain amount of small amount of people get the wealth? Because it seemed like to me our natural wealth over here was shared amongst the tribes. Like everybody had, it was all of ours. It wasn't no, oh, this one dude owned all the cows. This one dude owned down there 2,020 million acres. How like now it's only 1% of a group that own all the shit when we owned it as a tribe. And
they had to shut our banks down first.
Okay.
When they shut our banks down, we were still sitting on gold and coal in large stockpiles. Because I was in the north, the coal was a valuable commodity, and gold has always been valuable all over the world. It was for international trade, right? And silver, right? So the stockpiles we had made some of the families be wealthy when some of the elders liquidated the asset. Most of that was done in the 1900s with the repeal of the gold under FDR with the Federal Reserve Act. When they took over the banking system, and they declared it illegal to own gold, so a lot of people sold their gold to the banks. In order to get into the fiat system. So they was coming in with a financial backing, whereas a lot of us had to pull ourselves up by our bootstraps with no boots on.
Damn.
Right. So what did we start doing? We started creating penny stores. This is where your dollar store concept come from. The penny store, we go in there, was really, we used to call it the candy store a lot. But you go in there with a penny and you have to come out with a little small brown paper bag full of candy for a penny. Yep. Right. Now, you can't buy shit for a penny. I ain't seen nothing that you can buy for a penny in a long time.
Man, I'm telling you.
Right? But you used to have what's called penny stores, and as inflation went up, then you had your 5 and dime, which is your nickel and dime store. Right? You went from your nickel and dime store to your quarter stores, then you went to your 50-cent stores, and now we at dollar stores. Yeah. The dollar is less than a penny back then. The penny back then was worth more than the dollar is today.
Damn, sure is.
Let that sink in. That's inflation. Right? That's how they skim the money off the top right in front of you, because they call somebody called the chairman of the Fed to come from overseas to America to tell you how much the interest rate is.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
A lot of them people making that shit up, sweetie. A lot of them making that shit up. But what they doing is they saying my great grandmother or great great grandmother was half Indian. That make me 24%. That's how they come up with it. They don't really know.
Yeah,
Because
James
us,
Brown.
we didn't go by percentages. We said you were one of us or you ain't one of us.
Right?
We didn't have stepbrothers. You either my brother or you not my brother.
Hey?
We didn't have stepsisters. She was my sister or she wasn't my sister. That's all. And
Yeah.
cousins, our cousin was my brother from my mother's sister. My sister from my father's brother. Them were siblings. For us, we all were crawling around in Big Mama house, snotting at the same time.
That's fire.
Saggy diapers together. We were siblings to us in our hearts. So we weren't divided like that. The hardest part was to bust the family up. Once they bust the family up, that's when they went to really work on us, and that was in the 60s.
Right.